The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gam Podcast Network is brought to you by Edge Boots. Paying for better. Sign up today at just.bet. Code SGPN. When you sign up, get a free Refs Terrorist t-shirt. Claim your shirt at sportsgampodcast.com/refs. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gam Podcast here on the Sports Gam Podcast Network. It's currently Sunday afternoon, June 8th, around 4 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Rosso Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Time to get into the start of the grass season here on the ATP level. So, of course, we just finished the French Open. I'll recap the final between Alcaraz and Sinner in a second, but it is officially grass season time. So we are going to be making the pivot to two events taking place on grass in Stuttgart and in Den Bosch. So we can break down both of those events with some outright picks as well for lock and dog picks at the end of the show. Do want to point out, though, we have no quarter odds for either event, so apologies there. But with qualifying going on today, decent amount of rain caused the schedule to kind of get pushed back a little bit, but we have no quarter odds available. So apologies there. We're going to deal with what we have, and we're going to go through the outrights to win the event, as well as the first round picks for the lock and the dog segment. Now, before we get into the actual recap of the French Open final, a reminder that you can help support the show by subscribing on YouTube. And a reminder, you can also find the podcast on Spotify or Apple. So you can help the podcast grow by leaving some feedback, either on YouTube, on Spotify, or Apple, by subscribing. We finally crossed 1K in subscribers, so thank you if you are one of the people that helped out. If not, you can help us grow potentially to 2K in the next year or so. Either way, though, point is, hopefully you've been enjoying the show. Leave some feedback, though. Don't forget to leave a rating and a review on Spotify or Apple. Plus, a reminder, check out the merch store, because we have a lot of great Tennis Game Podcast merch with sweatshirts, t-shirts, and mugs. Very high quality, very affordable. Recommend getting yourself something there. Plus, a reminder, you can also check out the app that we have, because SGPN app is free to download. Get all your free picks podcasts for the Stanley Cup, College Baseball World Series, NBA Finals, etc. on the SGPN app. Get it for free wherever you do get your apps. Moving on, though, to the actual recap of the final between Alcaraz and Sinner that took place on Sunday morning. Overall, a great episode for us. We won everything. Starting off with the lock and dog, we swept. We had the over, 39.5 games, never in doubt as that flew over. Alcaraz was on the verge of losing in straight sets. He was down a break early in the third set, fought back, got the break immediately, then broke again as he won in, once again, a pretty competitive third set. Then he came back and it went 5, so it flew over. The point is, though, the lock was never in doubt. Nice win there. For the dog, also a nice win. We doubled down on the over, took Sinner team total over. Thought both guys would get there in the end. They did, as it was a 5-set marathon. But Sinner won 2 straight sets to start the match. At that point, we just needed him to lose a set. He did, and we coasted from there. So never really in doubt, lock and dog, with the exception of the early third set, where Alcaraz was down to break immediately, but then he kind of took over the third set, and from that point, we were cooking, but never in doubt. Nice, easy win for the lock and the dog, doubling down on the overs. Now, for the outrights, we also had Alcaraz to win the event at plus 120. We also had Sinner to win the event, and Sinner was a better price, but either way, we did win an outright either way, so cash the 120. Alcaraz does defend his French Open title, and it was definitely a marathon and a half. But either way, nice job by Alcaraz coming back, and once again, a nice win for us for the lock and dog and for the outright for the event on the men's and the women's side, because we did have golf as well, and that was definitely a nice way to wrap up a pretty profitable event for us for the future markets. Now, time to get into the bigger deep dive of the actual final. I was not going to breeze over it. I was going to go more in detail on it, but I wanted to get through the actual picks first. Then we'll get into the big discussion of Alcaraz actually winning, a massive choke job by Sinner, then a massive choke job by Alcaraz, but Alcaraz came back, played a great tiebreak, and was able to win the Super Breaker, the first Super Breaker of the entire event, actually, in the final. Go figure, as he won comfortably in the Super Breaker by the score of 10-2. So, where exactly do we start when it comes to breaking down the actual, once again, matchup itself? The way that I'll start is by saying we did have 2 specific outcomes that I said would happen. Either Sinner would win in 4, or Alcaraz would win in 5. That's the exact prediction that I had, and it's what happened. We got everything right. We picked Alcaraz to win in 5 as the actual prediction that got there, as Alcaraz did win in 5. Definitely a very entertaining match. I have in the banner a question: if it is the best match ever played. It might be. I'll tell you that much. If you end up actually looking at the box score, you might forget that the match took 5 hours and 29 minutes. It was the second longest Grand Slam final of all time, behind the Djokovic and Nadal Australian Open final from, I think it was 2012. Point is, though, it's the second longest match of all time, and it would have probably gone longer if Super Breakers didn't exist and if they ended up having a win-by-2 system like they used to in the French Open. But it was an all-time great match. Definitely lived up to the hype and then some. Sinner was in great form. He had not dropped a set yet, beat Djokovic in straight sets, won the first 2 sets, and was up a break in the third set. And it looked like he was going to be on the verge of one of the best title runs of all time when you factor in how little stress he actually had in a bunch of the sets, and the fact that Sinner's worst surface is probably clay, and he was 1 set away from winning a Grand Slam on his worst surface without dropping a set, which is insane to think about. But then the match turned on a dime. Alcaraz was able to get the break back, broke again, then won the third set. Then Sinner, you felt like needed to win the fourth set, because we know Alcaraz entering the match is one of the best 5-set players of all time. And it was interesting because Sinner had never won a match that was over 4 hours long in his career. But Alcaraz, surprisingly, had never come back from 2 sets down before. So you had basically history having to give one way or another, which made it interesting. But Alcaraz was down. He was not out. I'll put it that way. He definitely went down swinging. Then you ended up having the extremely intense moment there in the fourth set. Third set, yes, Sinner was up a break, but it's fine. Alcaraz responded. He outplayed him for the majority of that fourth set. Third set, played very well. Eventually did get the break. Gave it back, though, as Sinner got the break back in the 3-5 return game, but then Alcaraz broke back again to win the set 6-4. Then the fourth set happened, and Sinner was able to kind of get on the offensive. He had a breakpoint chance early in the fourth set, did not convert. Then he had a low 40 chance in the 3-3 game. He did convert. Then you got to the fireworks because Alcaraz was down a triple championship point. It was low 40 in the 3-5 game. So Sinner's got 3 championship points. Alcaraz looks like he's about to lose the match. And then Sinner ended up not converting. Good forehand. Cross court by Alcaraz to force an error by Sinner. That's fine. And then Sinner punted 2 very, very makeable shots. He had a backhand return down the line, which he ended up missing on a second serve, and then he hit one to the net in the middle of a neutral rally. And after that, Alcaraz ended up holding. So you figured, okay, Sinner was up 5-3, triple championship point. Maybe we'll see Sinner blink and get tight, and maybe he'll end up punting the match away, or at least the game away, because he was serving out the match despite choking away the 3 championship points. However, Sinner did get tight. He choked it, and Alcaraz came back and forced a tiebreak, basically, as Sinner went from up 5-3 with triple championship point to blowing it and then losing the fourth set in a tiebreak. So at that point, we thought that Sinner might be completely done, who completely choked away the match in a golden opportunity to win his first ever French Open title. Then Alcaraz broke immediately to start the 5th set. And at that point, everyone thought this match is over. Sinner's going to probably roll over, and you're going to see Alcaraz win like 6-2 in the final set. Did not happen. Sinner ended up forcing a couple breakpoint chances in the 1-2 return game. Did not convert. Then Alcaraz was up 5-3 in the final set, and he had a chance to serve out the title, and he choked it as he was up 5-4, and Sinner broke back to force what turned into a really intense collection of minutes there. Sinner, though, ended up holding. Couple of deuces, no actual breakpoints for Alcaraz, and Sinner went up 6-5. So he was down 3-5 and then fought off once again, Alcaraz, who was serving for the match, and he was able to take a lead in the 5th set. Then Alcaraz ended up having a great collection of shots there to hold after fighting off a deuce there in the 5-6 service game. And then Alcaraz went complete God mode and played arguably the greatest tiebreaker of all time. He won the first 7 points of the Super Breaker. I can't even blame Sinner for basically any of those points. Alcaraz made every perfect shot imaginable, and at that point, Alcaraz played some of the highest level tennis I've ever seen in the span of about a 5-minute stretch, and the match was over. Sinner won a couple of points to not get shut out, but it was over, and Alcaraz came back from the brink of elimination. I believe he was around 65-1 live, down triple championship point, and he came back and he won a second French Open title. So, all-timer, it might be the best match of all time. It took about 5.5 hours. It was something that was just really indescribable. And if you are a tennis fan, you know why, because that's what you look for in Grand Slam finals. If you are new to tennis, that's what you're looking for if you want to get interested into the sport. So either way, all-time great matchup. Sinner can beat everybody except for Alcaraz, and that continued in this one. We picked Alcaraz in 5. It worked out. Sinner, the issue was the choking in the end of the 4th set. The stamina, though, was an issue early on, but he looked great at the end of the 5th set. I thought that Sinner was able to kind of survive the ambush that he ended up suffering from towards the beginning of that 5th set. And he actually kind of took control in a decent portion of the rallies in the 5th set. But unfortunately, Alcaraz found another level somehow that he had, which we didn't know he had, and he played perfect tennis. It was like Neo in the Matrix when he figures out that he's actually the chosen one, and you see all the green numbers on the wall, and he understands everything. That was Alcaraz on a tennis court for about 15 minutes, and he completely played the best tennis he could possibly play en route to winning a Grand Slam title. Yes, Sinner did choke. Yes, it was a great comeback from Alcaraz, and yes, Alcaraz also choked, and Sinner showed great mental toughness by not only kind of coming back from a breakdown in the 5th set, but also just not mentally unraveling after completely punting away that 4th set with multiple championship points. It was everything you could ask for. It was as good as advertised, and it was an epic. And thankfully, both guys are still in their young 20s. So we're going to be seeing a bunch of matchups between them over the next decade plus, and I'm really looking forward to it. It was everything you could want. It's one of the best matches of all time. You can throw it next to the Federer-Nadal Wimbledon match. You have the Nadal Djokovic Australian Open final. If you want to throw in, there are a couple of matchups you can throw in there. Federer-Safin, I think, is underrated in the Australian Open. There are a bunch of all-time great matchups. If you want to throw in the Djokovic-Federer Wimbledon with the 40-15 comeback from Joker, you can do that too. It's an all-timer. Put it on the short list. If you did not see it, you missed out entirely, and you should watch the match because it was all-time great stuff. So anyway, wanted to mention that. We got everything right in the final. Feels good. Felt especially good having to not sweat out a side for the money line when we cashed the over an hour and a half before the match ended, which was definitely, I'd say, a nice plus there. But I enjoyed it. It was, once again, a truly lifetime, but once in a long time experience watching that live. And I sat there for 5.5 hours, and I was absolutely glued. So definitely lived up to the hype. Van mentioning the match was even better because of the fact there were no injury timeouts, no medical timeouts. You were concerned a little bit after Sinner dropped the 4th set. Maybe he would either leave court or try to get some type of stalling tactic in to try to take Alcaraz's momentum away. He didn't do it. So yeah, I think you're right. I think both guys showing up and really not stalling at all definitely helped the flow of the match. I got nothing else to say. It was an all-time great match, one of the top 5 matches of all time. If you want to argue top 1, I'm not going to argue with you, honestly, because I think that it checked every box you look for an all-time just epic, and we got that. So either way, that's going to wrap up the clay slate for the immediate future, and we did end up having a pretty good tournament for the outrights. Time to move on into the grass slate for the ATP season, because we have Stuttgart and Den Bosch. Before we get into, though, the preview of the 2 events, do want to remind you once again, they're brought to you by our sponsor, which is Edgewood, the first ever bank for bettors, ensuring that our gambling transactions are approved, no usage fees, no minimums, catch records as well. Permits and approval from the deposit sign up today. Edgewood.pepper code SGPN. We sign up. A reminder that you can also get a free Rest Terrorist t-shirt. Go to sportscam.com/refs to claim your free shirt. We're also brought to you by Circa Ultimate Sustainable Giveaway, because Circa Resort and Casino is giving away the ultimate fantasy football experience for a 12-person league in Vegas to draft their teams, be treated like VIPs for their stay. You get a limo ride from the airport, a 5K tab for stadium swim, and a hotel stay for you and your 11 league mates. You could always get 15% of everything at the Circa properties with promo code SGP15. Enter the ultimate fantasy football contest for free by going to sportscam.com/Circa. That's sportscam.com/CIRCA. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finished recapping the final in the French Open. Time to move on into the preview of Den Bosch and Stuttgart. They start off early in the morning. I believe Den Bosch is starting at around 4 a.m. So we'll cover Den Bosch first for the sake of the episode. For Den Bosch, though, you ended up seeing de Minaur win this last year as he beat Korda in the final. Saw Griekspoor beat Thompson the year prior. And the insane miracle run by Van Rijthoven, who ended up beating Medvedev, which might be the flukiest title run of all time on the ATP level, because Van Rijthoven's done nothing ever since. But either way, that was definitely a miraculous run by the local Dutch kid. And I have to mention it every time. It's the most unlikely title I can remember on the ATP Tour. But either way, those are kind of going to sum up the type of, I'd say, winners are going to tend to see in the event here. Stuttgart I'll mention in a second. Both of them, since they're on grass, definitely support better serving. But serving's a lot more important in Stuttgart than it is for Den Bosch by comparison. De Minaur is not the biggest server. He won. Korda's not the biggest server. He's fine at serving, not exactly elite at it. He made the final. Griekspoor's good at serving. Thompson has some grass skills, serving volley style, but the point is he's not exactly a bomb server. Still pretty good. Van Rijthoven's decent server, and Medvedev, we know, has a pretty good serve in general. So serving, of course, does help on grass. It's not exactly a make-or-break type of attribute for the courts here in Den Bosch, but you're still going to be seeing a decent amount of longer sets based on the actual just tendencies of grass tennis. Now, for the actual outright odds here for the event, Medvedev, who did lose in the final a couple years ago, is plus 200. You have Hurkacz at around 260. Now, reminder, you shop around, find better odds if you do look for other once again, platforms. Don't forget the line shop. I'm just using DraftKings as it's convenient. But you have Hurkacz at 260. You have Humbert at 450. Khachanov at 7-1. Papirin at 11-1. You have Diallo, 22-1. Thompson at 35-1, a former finalist. Bergs, 40-1. O'Connell, 40-1. Borges, 50-1. Basavaredi, 50-1. Jari, 50-1. And you kind of get the point. If you want to go for some home country guys, you can find Dzanchulp at around 50-1. And if you want to go for some long shot veteran guys, you can get Echeverry at 65-1, Vukic 60-1, and Batista Agut at 80-1. Now, for the actual draw, once again, we have no quarter odds. So starting off with the favorites here. Starting off with Medvedev. The issue with Medvedev is the fact that he's not won a title in over a year, and I don't trust him at all. Now, he's a good server. He's a good grass player. Did beat Sinner in Wimbledon. You might have forgotten about that. But the point is Medvedev's a guy who I still don't trust. Seems to always look good early. Then he implodes, and you kind of wonder why you ended up backing the guy. I have Medvedev on the banned list for the future, so I will not be taking him in this event. But his draw is not that bad. It's also not the most favorable in theory. Does have O'Connell or a qualifier in the second round. He should win that after a bye in the first. Tabilo, I mean. De Jong, Jari, and Darderi should beat those guys, but you know what? On grass, maybe get surprised if, in theory, Jari, for example, has a great serving display. Maybe he could win a breaker or two against Medvedev, but Medvedev should make it into the quarters. However, he's in the same half as Hurkacz, and Hurkacz looked very good in Geneva, did choke away that final against Djokovic in the third set, then lost immediately in the French Open to Fonseca. I don't really care. I thought he looked very good in Geneva. I think that he's in a good spot for a pretty solid run here on grass. He's a very good grass player because his serve is very good, and I do think that will help him over the course of this event. But if you're asking me who I'm picking in a matchup between Hurkacz and Medvedev, I would actually take Hurkacz, just based on the form both guys. I think that after coming back from injury, I like how Hurkacz played. I think that he can pull off the upset here. It's pretty interesting that the two favorites in the tournament are in the same half of the draw, which does open up chances for other guys in the field. But you're looking at the immediate section for Hurkacz. He does have Agut in the first round, which could be tricky. I think you should beat him with the serve, though. I think you should beat Papirin in the potential matchup there in the quarters. Maybe the semis, you'll see him against Medvedev. I'll go with Hurkacz for my outright first pick at 450. Found a rogue line offshore and BetOnline. It was 450. I believe most books, once again, at around 3-1, give or take. I'll take the extra value, though, at 450. Think his I'd say his ground strokes can be very streaky, but on grass, you don't really need it as much because the serve and the length of the points will definitely be, I'd say, less tiring and less stressful because most of these rallies probably take less than 7 shots by comparison. So I think that Hurkacz is in a good spot to look good here in this event. So give me Hurkacz at plus 450. But since I am skipping Medvedev, that does open up the bottom half of the draw because the top 2 favorites are in the top half. So you're looking at the bottom half featuring Khachanov and Humbert as the main 2 guys. Thompson can be sneaky. Keep an eye out for Thompson, who I think can maybe make it interesting, but a matchup against Kovacevic in the first round, then Diallo or Vukic. Vukic has been really bad. He's still a pretty good grass player in general. Diallo, though, could be Thompson in theory, but Thompson could be the Cinderella run if you're looking for somebody to go with in this one. But I do think for the second outright, I am going to go with chalk, kind of. I'll go with Humbert at 5-1. I think that Humbert, even though it was really bad in the clay slate, despite being a Frenchman, he's really not that great on clay. And I do think that it is a good opportunity for Humbert to get back on track here on grass. Think he's tricky to play on grass. I mentioned before the guys that have won the event with De Minaur, for example, Korda made a final. Pretty decent ralliers who actually have had success here on the courts in Den Bosch. And Humbert checks that box. He's a guy who has a pretty tricky lefty serve, and I do think his overall rally game can be very frustrating for opponents to deal with. So I actually don't mind the potential value on a pretty favorable draw for Humbert at around 5-1. I think it's a good price. Now, Humbert is a guy who we avoided in the clay season because he's not a great clay player, but I do think he's pretty underrated on grass. He's definitely more of a hard court guy, but I think he's better on grass than he is on clay. He had a pretty good run in Wimbledon last year. He won that 5-set marathon against Nakashima, from what I remember, and then he ended up losing, and I think it was 4 to Alcaraz in the 4th round, I think. But the point is he's still a pretty good grass player. I think the draw itself is favorable for him. Has a bye, then a Chicata or a qualifier, sure. Same immediate quarter as Borges, or like Echeverry is not good on grass, or Virtanen, who did win a grass challenger last week. But the point is Humbert will be a decent favorite. Same half as Khachanov. I think it's a pretty favorable draw for Humbert to get back on track here, and I do think that based on his actual, I'd say, skill set on grass, I like the price at 5-1. But you avoid Hurkacz and Medvedev until the final, which I do like quite a bit. So I'll go with that as my second choice for the outright. I do see 3-1 in a couple of spots. So once again, shop around, try to find a better price. And I think I found the best price there at 5-1. So don't forget to shop your lines. A constant reminder that you should always be doing so, because why would you limit yourself for potential profit? Where you just shop around, it takes about 2 seconds, and you'll find yourself a better price. Of course, it depends if you have a lot of different books in your area, but if you do, capitalize on it. Don't be afraid to shop around. And once again, if you end up winning some outrights, you'll make a lot more money if you are willing to shop around by comparison. Now, I do want to point out, though, I said before that Thompson is around 35-1. Quickly double checking if there is a different price out there that might be better. Probably not. I saw a couple that were cheaper, but I do want to quickly see if Thompson is available to potentially take at a good price. I see 28-1. That's not going to cut it. Let me quickly check Bet365 for a second. But I'll have my answer there in a second for my final choice. You know who it is, but I do quickly want to see if there is a better price out there, because why not? So quickly checking if there is a better price. I don't see one. I see 35-1 as the best price. I see that available on DraftKings currently as the best number. I will take that for Thompson. I think Thompson is a guy who has proven time and time again that he actually has a pretty underrated amount of skill on grass. He did choke in the doubles final last year in Wimbledon, where they had a golden opportunity to win in the final. They choked it away. But he's still a good grass player. Made the final here a couple of years ago, and I do think that his serving is solid, his volley game is solid, and overall underrated grass court player. And I said before, he's in the bottom half, does get to avoid Medvedev and Hurkacz until the final. So you're looking at a spot where he'd have potentially facing off against Khachanov, who he could beat in the quarters, Humbert, who maybe gets upset, who knows. But the point is the bottom half's weak. Give me the guy who's made a deep run here before, a good grass player in general. Give me Thompson at 35-1 as my long shot for this event. Moving on, though, to Stuttgart. This one's going to be featuring a ton of very, very long sets in terms of games. Bit of an oxymoron, though. A lot of games, but a short amount of time, because most of these big servers are going to roll in this event. One of the fastest courts in the entire tour, arguably the fastest. It's on pace with Halle, which we saw have a bunch of breakers last year. I see a bunch of breakers in this one too. Recent winners, though. You saw Draper against Berrettini. Berrettini, we know, is a great server. Draper turned into a top 5 guy in the world. So that kind of makes sense too. You saw Tiafoe beat Struff. Struff made a final. I believe, Struff had a couple of match points in that breaker against Tiafoe, and he punted it away. I remember because we had Struff like 25-1 in that event, but Tiafoe's a pretty good server too. Struff is too. Berrettini again, Cilic and Felix. Good players, but you tend to see good serves dominate, and we'll go from there. Now, for the actual outrights for the event, you want to briefly look at the actual pricing. So as a once again, reminder, we have no quarter odds, so deal with it, but we do have to go with the lines that we have, so it is what it is. Zverev, though, is making the trip in his home country to Stuttgart, plus 160 as the favorite. Fritz is 330. Shelton is 5-1. Felix is 8-1. Perricard's 12-1. Shapo's 14-1. Leheshka is at 18-1. Fernley 25-1. Arnaldi 35-1. Moutet is 35-1. Mickelson 4-1. Halles 40-1. Sonego 40-1. Monfils 40-1. Nakashima 40-1, you kind of get the point. Struff, though, if you want to go for a former finalist, is available at 50-1. You should not take that. He's been useless for about a year, but I'm just mentioning he is a former runner-up. If you want to consider it, you should not. But I just wanted to mention the price. So, looking at the draw for the people here in Stuttgart. Now, I'll start off with the favorite because you have Zverev, of course, who is in his home country. Does that matter? You could argue not really. Now, Zverev, I think his weakest surface is on grass. He's not terrible at it. Did lose a 5-setter to Fritz in Wimbledon last year. But the point is Zverev can make some respectable showings, but he's not at his best on grass, historically speaking. But his draw is very favorable. Has a bye. Then either Fognini or Moutet should win that easily. Then either Nakashima, Fernley, Tien, or Nishioka. Zverev's going to cruise into the quarterfinals, and we'll go from there. Now, into the semis from that immediate quarter. He does have Shelton in his half. He also has Leheshka and Struff, if you want to mention recent, I'd say, local guys who could potentially do well. I don't trust Struff at all, but Arnaldi can be tricky as well. Point is, though, you have Shelton and Leheshka and Arnaldi against each other before facing off against Zverev, and Zverev has basically nobody because I don't think that Nakashima is that good. So based on that, I think that Zverev has a good path, objectively speaking. I'll take him, even though I know he's a head case and he does tend to lose us money. I think 180 is a good price. I'll take that instead. Thought about going for Shelton at 5-1. Didn't want it. I know that we saw Zverev kill Shelton on clay in a final a couple of weeks ago, but I do think that Shelton's serve is very solid. But I do think his overall transition to grass might not be that smooth. Tends to take him, I'd say, a couple of matches to get fully adjusted to new surfaces. And I do think that Zverev will look sharp with the crowd behind him, and he has a good serve as well. Give me Zverev at 180 as my first choice. But that's going to wrap it up for the actual immediate lower odds guys. Fritz I thought about, but I can't trust him. There's only so many head cases you can actually trust, and Fritz does have a decent draw, kinda. Not really. Halles or Sonego in the second round. Not great. You have Shapo potentially in the quarterfinals. Not a great draw there. I think that his matchup potentially against Felix in the semis would not be that terrible. But his quarter is not great. So I'll pass on Fritz there for the odds at plus 330. Not to mention the fact he's been pretty underwhelming based on form for the last couple of months. I'll pass on him there. Shelton, I thought about. Don't like the odds at 5-1. I'll pass on him as well. Felix has been really bad too. I'll pass on him. Just not into it. I know that he had a decent run there in Hamburg, and then eventually did end up losing in the semis to Rublev handily. Not interested at 8-1. I need to see him regain some form first before I actually back him. But it takes me to a guy who does have the biggest serve on the entire tour. Said before, big serves do quite well in Stuttgart. Give me Perricard at 16-1. Is Perricard a great player? You could argue no, But you know what? Serve bots do well. And I do think that a serve will be basically unbreakable on the courts here in Stuttgart with the pace. It might look similar to what we saw on the indoor courts last year. I think it was in Basel where he won with basically never facing a break point because his serving was just too good. I think that might happen again in this one. Maybe not to the same degree where he has no break points faced, but I do think Perricard will be able to hold serve easily throughout most of the matches that he's in, arguably all of the matches that he's in. But I like the price 16-1 for a guy with the best serve on the fastest court on tour, one of the fastest courts on tour. I think it's a good spot. His draw itself is also not that bad. Does have a matchup in the first round. Again, sorry, trying to find it really quickly. Where is it? Okay, so it's against Safulin in the first round, which should be fine. Felix in the second round. We know Felix is a pretty bad, I'd say, returner for a guy who's in the top 20 most of the time. So I think that you might see a couple of breakers unfold in either the Safulin match or the Felix match. But you know what? 16-1 for a guy with an absolute bomb of a serve, I think is worth the price here at 16-1 for upside. I'll take that. Now, for my last choice, I'll go with another head case. I can only take so many. I skipped Fritz at 330. Shelton is not really that much of a head case. He's been improving on it. Felix, though, is. I took Perricard, but I am going to take another head case. I'm going to go with a guy that's pretty underrated on grass, been good over the years on grass, and I do like his overall serve when it's on. Give me Chapo at 16-1, mainly based on his draw. I think it's not that bad. I'm not a Rinderknecht guy. It's his first round matchup. Qualifier in the second round, then Fritz or potentially Sonigo or Hallis in the third round. We saw, or I should say, in the, sorry, what the hell was I going to say? Into the semifinals. But the point is, you're looking at a spot where you're looking at Chapo, who I think can have a pretty decent run here. Fritz he'd face off against in the quarters, is what I meant to say. But we saw him beat Fritz earlier this year. So the fact is, we know that Chapo can beat him. Fritz has been in bad form. I'll target him. 16-1, though, for a pretty good grass player. I do think has some value to it. I'll take it as my last choice. So once again, I went chalky for Den Bosch, went more out there for Stuttgart. For the outrights, though, for Den Bosch, I did end up going with Herkach at 450, and I took Humbert at 5-1, and I took Thompson as my long shot at 35-1. For my outright picks for Stuttgart, I ended up going with Zverev at 180, did go with Perricard at 16-1, and Chapo at 16-1. It's the grass season. If you find a guy who's serving very well, they can win easily just based on how tough it is to break people on grass. I'll take some flyers. Might be a fun week, so we'll see what happens there. Trying to capitalize on what could be a pretty open draw based on how difficult it is to transition from clay to grass. You might see some guys struggle early, might see some upsets early on. We'll see what happens, but I'm going to try to capitalize on it by taking some longer shots for some of these, I'd say, solid draws that they are being given. Anyway, time to move on into the lock and dog picks. For the first round of these events, before we get into that, the reminder, they're brought to you by our sponsor, which is Rhythm, because you've heard us talk about Rhythm before. They just dropped a game-changing feature called Power Trends, where they are AI-detected patterns where Rhythm's models have consistently have a high ROI. And also, Power Trends are updated every day, exclusive to Rhythm. No touts or noise, just clean data-backed picks. And a reminder, try it out for free for a week by using the Rhythm app. Download it, use the Power Trends, start betting smarter, and try out the free 7-day trial by going to sportsgame.com/RATHMM. We're also brought to you by MyBookie.ag, because MyBookie plays every sport. Then they have playoffs. They have the NHL playoffs. They have baseball. They have tennis. They have everything you could possibly think of. You can also use it for total locations. Use crypto for willingness to payouts. Use a positive sign for your use promo code SGPN to get 100% of the match up to 1K. Terms and MyBookie.ag promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Game Podcast. Finished going through the preview of Stuttgart and Den Bosch. Now it's time to move on into the lock and dog picks. For the lock, I'm going to go to a matchup between Virtanen and Etcheverry. Now, even though Etcheverry is ranked higher, Virtanen's favored, which tells you that he's probably winning because he's a pretty good grass player. Etcheverry, not so much. But I like the team total over 12.5 games. Bit juicy, but I still like it at minus 141. Virtanen has gone over this number in 4 of his last 5 matches. On grass, by the way, did just win a grass challenger. Pretty good grass player because his serve is good, and I do see a bit of a longer match unfolding for at least one set. But Virtanen, despite being a lower-ranked player, is favored. I think Etcheverry, though, is, once again, always a threat to win against these guys because we know Etcheverry does have the firepower. His serve can be good when he actually hits his spots. I could see a close match that comes down to the wire, maybe 3 sets. Couple of scripts, though, but Etcheverry has had a bunch of marathons on grass over the years. 5 of the last 6 grass matches did not end in straight sets, so you tend to see Etcheverry being involved in marathons, win or lose on grass. Is that happening here? But there's a chance if Virtanen wins in a couple of ways. There's a breaker involved. He ends up going 3 sets, or maybe he ends up losing the match, but it goes distance, and he ends up getting there anyway. But I like the team total over for Virtanen. Faced off one time before. It was in the U.S. Open a couple years ago, and Virtanen did win in 5 sets. It's not really applicable because it's hard court a couple years ago, but still, point is Virtanen has been able to serve well recently, as he did win a grass challenger. Think he'll be able to do well while also giving away some free return games to Etcheverry, because Etcheverry, I do think, will be able to serve well enough to capitalize on Virtanen's pretty weak return game. But give me the team total over for Virtanen at 12.5 at -141 as my lock. For my dog, I'm going to go with a prop. I'm going to go with a first set total. I'm going to go with Arnaldi and Struff. First set over 10.5 games at +125. Struff is a very good player to bet overs with in sets because he's not a very good returner, and he's also a good server. We saw him make the final in Stuttgart before, and the fact is he does volley as well, which can definitely limit the point length. Arnaldi wants to rally, different styles, but Struff has been involved in a bunch of breakers in Stuttgart, whether he wins or loses. 4 of Struff's last 6 matches in Stuttgart, 4 of his last 6 sets in Stuttgart have ended in a tiebreak. So you might see, once again, a very, I'd say, uneventful start to the match where it's a feeling out process. Struff serves well, doesn't break, and you end up getting a marathon in your hands for the first set. But Arnaldi has also had a bunch of long first sets in his grass career. 5 Arnaldi's last 6 grass matches had at least 12 games in the first set. So I do think you'll see a marathon unfold for at least the first set. I think that Arnaldi figures that out eventually and does win. But I definitely see a bit of a transition period for all returners dealing with good serves on grass after playing on clay for about a month straight. So for this one, I'm going to go with the first set over as my dog at +125. So once again, the plays here for the show, the lock's going to be on Virtanen. Team total over 12.5 games against Etcheverry at -141. For the dog, I'm going to go with Struff and Arnaldi. First set over 10.5 games at +125. Let's wrap it up for the show. We're back once again for the quarters in Stuttgart and Den Bosch. Find me on Twitter, Radio, though. Until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.